Hello and welcome to my fifth match from the B division of the Dominion League against BitterWurmcoil. This is the feature game from that match because it illustrates how to use a very powerful duration card, Grotto. Before we talk about Grotto, let's have a look at the kingdom. We have two strong draw cards in this kingdom. Livery can gain you many horses because we have plus buy in market. And Storyteller can draw many cards, especially when complemented with a gold gainer in the form of Horde. Plus buy, as we mentioned, is in market, plus action comes from Conclave, and you have some trashing in Infirmary. In other words, we have all the pieces that we need to build a deck that can get more than one province per turn. In fact, with the amount of coin in this kingdom, it looks like you can easily buy 2 or 3 provinces in a turn here. Quite powerful. And my initial thoughts on how to build this deck was that I wanted to trash down with the Infirmary and then put some liveries, some markets, and eventually get a Horde to build up the money that we need to hit 2 and 3 provinces on one turn. I was hoping to get 4-3 for that Infirmary overpay. Instead, I get 3-4. I considered a Guardian here so that I could get to 5 on turn 2. In that case, I would have the option of Livery on turn 2 or overpay by 2 for the Infirmary. I would definitely trash one estate and hopefully a second one. Instead, I go for that strong card we spoke about, the Grotto. Now my opponent has a 4-3 and I expected Infirmary from them. However, they buy the Conclave. And I saw this as a missed opportunity for my opponent. I said, what? Conclave over Infirmary? There's no way. I was quite happy to see it. However, my opponent is good. She knows what she's doing, and you'll see why that Conclave was bought soon enough. I go for the Grotto on turn 1, and Infirmary on turn 2. I do take the chance with the Infirmary here. There's some chance that I draw into the Grotto. That would be the worst case scenario. I was okay with that outcome if it occurred because I felt trashing was that important. Turn 3, my opponent gets a Grotto, and this is exactly what you want to do with Grotto in the early game. You want to get 2 of them as soon as possible. Now, I play my Grotto, and I hastily set aside all 4 cards here into the Grotto. I think this is not right. At this point in the game, I can easily calculate how many cards are in my deck. I bought 2, I trashed 1, I have 11 cards in the deck. If I set aside 4 cards into my Grotto, 5 cards will be out of play. Therefore, my deck size is 6. And with the Infirmary, I will see all the cards in my deck. Which sounds great, but I can't capitalize on all. I just want to get to 5 to buy a market or a livery, so I don't need to set aside all of them here. What I should have done was just set aside 2 and buy a Grotto. So in that case, 3 cards would stay out of play. My deck size would be 9 because I bought the Grotto. I would see 5, as you usually do. Grotto would activate, discard 2, draw 2. I would have a starting hand of 7 cards. 2 cards would be left in deck. And it is very likely that I see my Grotto, my second Grotto, and my Infirmary, and still get to 5. I may miss one of the actions there, but I'm getting to 5 and seeing one of the actions more times than not there. However, I did not get the second Grotto early, which is generally a mistake. Instead, I set aside everything quite hastily, pass it back to my opponent. Here, they set aside everything, which is fine because they already have the second Grotto. I see my whole deck, as I expected I would. 7 coppers, there's nothing to buy here except the 5 costs. And I go for a market over a livery at this point. I wanted to play the Infirmary one more time, is why I bought the market. Eventually I would need the plus buy too. And I didn't want the livery to collide with the Infirmary just yet. So here's my opponent's big hand on turn 5. They see their grotto. There was some chance it missed. There's still 3 cards in the deck, but it didn't. They set 3 aside, get up to 5, and this is what the grotto chain allows you to do. And I think for the rest of the game, my opponent is able to maintain this grotto chain. They get to 5, they buy a market. Intelligent choice, not a livery. The reason for the market is not just for the plus buy, but it also gives them the best chance of continuing to keep the grotto chain alive. I hit 5, but I didn't have a second grotto. So now it's not clear that I will hit 5 again here. However, my opponent set aside 3 cards. They set up a big turn for next turn. It's very likely that they hit 5 and also keep setting up for subsequent turns with those 2 grottos. In this case, grotto functions like Tactician. Tactician is the first card in Dominion that taught us 1 big turn is better than 2 average turns player. The cost on Tactician is more severe. You have to discard your hand. Grotto is not so severe, but it doesn't give you the extra action on the buy. However, the plus cards is still very, very good. And Grotto, unlike Tactician, is cheap. In some kingdoms, I could see the right opening being double Grotto, just to get to 5 as fast as possible. You can't do that with Tactician. There's no way you could open double Tactician. Only 10% of the time do you get to open a single Tactician, and that's not right most of the time. Okay, Grotto lecture aside, we get to 5 again on turn 5. Here I go for the livery. I'm okay switching terminals over from Infirmary to livery, plus there's Conclave I can get at some point to fix that problem. I'm not too fussed about it. 8 cards in hand for my opponent. They find the second grotto, so the chain keeps going. Here's the reason for the Conclave. Conclave let them set aside 1 more card into their grotto. They set 3 aside because Conclave gives them extra coin. That's why there's no Infirmary in the deck. The Conclave functions like a silver, so they need to put less cards on the table to get to 5, which means more cards can go into the grotto. And look at the 5 they bought, a Storyteller. Again, with the intention of keeping the grotto chain going. There was some chance that they missed the grotto. Fortunately for them, that didn't happen. Now I go for the second grotto. I set aside only 2 cards into mine so that I can afford the grotto. And hopefully we get to establish our grotto chain of our own. Market and Storyteller come out. They draw almost to the end of the deck. I assume they already had the grotto in hand, which is why they didn't draw all the way to the end of the deck. Grotto again, sets aside 3 this time, buys another 5 in the form of livery. This is unfortunate, our grotto misses here, but it'll happen. On the other hand, we get to 10. Could be a couple of 5s here, or a 4 and a 5, 4 and a 6. I decided to go for a Storyteller at this point, and I was considering the Conclave here, but instead I went for the second market instead. At this point, I do feel a bit behind, especially after that turn, because I was not able to find my grotto, so I need to spend 1 more turn to set up the grotto chain. And in the meantime, my opponent is looking frighteningly consistent with the grotto chain. Setting aside 3 cards here, 3 estates. The lack of trashing is actually beneficial to them because I have to set aside some of my money to keep the grotto chain going, whereas my opponent can set aside estates because they haven't trashed any. So they get to use their full coins, their full set of coins. Gets them up to 9 in this case. They spent some to draw the deck, of course. They get a second market themselves and a second Conclave. I go ahead, I set aside 4 in that grotto there. There was nothing else that I really wanted to buy. Maybe a Guardian, but can't be good. At that point, a couple horses come out for my opponent. Here they're probably thinking about how many cards they want to draw with the Storyteller. 1 more market, then the Storyteller gets them to the end of the deck, and they're set up. They are set up and quite consistent at this point. because they're probably saving horses as well in the grotto. This time they set aside 4 cards, 3 estates, and a copper. The grotto sort of puts your worst cards in the deck at the bottom of the deck and then allows you to draw 4 more cards, or as many as you set aside, of course, but generally it's 4 cards, which will be your better cards in the deck. So it's very, very good at keeping decks consistent. 11. 3 buys for my opponent, another livery comes out, and another market comes out. I was expecting Horde maybe from them there, but they opted to get some more money and draw with the livery instead. Yeah, this is a bit sad because my storyteller is redundant here, so maybe I wasted that 5 buy on my last turn or the last 2 turns. I do not put the storyteller inside the grotto because I want it in the deck. I don't want it to be discarded and sort of at the bottom of the deck. I get to 11 here and I'm feeling the heat. The decks are similar. My opponent has more money than me, largely thanks to the 2 conclaves. But I feel like I need to do something to try to get ahead at this point, and that something is going to involve a horde, signaling that I want to start scoring before my opponent. What to do with the other 5 is not clear to me here, and in the end I go for another market. Conclave was on my mind there too, to maybe play more liveries, but I felt like I didn't have the time, to be honest, to get the conclave. Maybe later when I happen to have 4 coins, like double province conclave or something. Again, my opponent is playing these markets slowly because they're thinking about how many cards they want to draw with the storyteller. Up to the end of the deck again here comes 2 liveries now, and at this point I feel like there's no way that this deck could fail with 2 liveries and the amount of horses they'll get here. Set aside 4 more cards into the grotto, down comes the horde, a storyteller, and another silver. Now is the time to fatten the deck with economy because there's so much draw in their deck. I have some decent draw too. I have a storyteller and I'll be gaining gold soon enough. I'm also calculating how many cards here I need to draw with this storyteller, and I do calculate well this time. Set aside 3, get up to 10. 10 is going to be a farm. Farm is money, farm is points, and I have 4 left over for conclave finally, to start maybe chipping away at the coppers in the deck, because I've neglected that for some time. However, this is the great thing with Grotto. My opponent has not trashed a single card, and their deck is more consistent, it's more powerful than mine. They've made my infirmary buy look foolish, and the conclave has provided so much value to them. The plus action they're using, the extra coin they're using to get more buying power to allow them to store more cards in their grotto in the early game. And now they're fully operational. They'll probably set aside 4 cards again here. I see no reason not to. The only question is, what do they want to buy? And here they have a huge turn. Double province and a second grotto, because there's no reason why the grotto chain only has to have 2 grottos. Now they have put more green cards in the deck. So 1 grotto can hold 3 estates and a copper. The other grotto could hold 2 provinces and 2 coppers. And then on your next turn, you start with 4 plus 4 plus 5 cards in hand. 13 cards in hand. How do you brick with a 13 card start in hand? There's no way. There's no way that you brick like that. I'm fortunate here though to be able to answer back the double province with a double province of my own. So I'm staying alive so to speak. Here I miscalculate by 1 on the storyteller. I play the horde. I should have played a copper because I didn't need the card from the storyteller. So I missed out on 1 coin here. I don't think it is going to be too consequential. Well, it is a bit consequential because here I am only able to set aside 2 cards in the grotto. If I calculated properly, I would have been able to, no. Yeah, I would have been able to set aside maybe 1 more card into the grotto here, I think. Clap back with the double province. Just staying 1 point behind. We gain a heap of gold and a heap of horses because you gain horse for the province and for the gold from the horde. Some horses come out from my opponent, and the grotto here makes me happy because you don't play the grotto in the middle of your turn, you play it at the end of the turn, but it turns out it's just yellow in their hand. It's just a heap of yellow. Triple province. And that is likely a win in play here, and unfortunately my deck doesn't even allow me the opportunity to see if I could fight back. I don't see any of my markets or my storyteller. I buy a duchy and hope beyond hope that something bad happens. But nothing bad happens to my opponent's turn. They fire off a bunch of horses and I call it quits. I hope you learned something about Grotto. We didn't do very well in this match either. Thank you for watching.